as president. The group says that because the president condemns illegal immigration, opposes abortion, and once criticized a disabled reporter from the New York Times, he embodies a threat to human rights worldwide. Well, we're joined now by Human Rights Watch Executive Director Kenneth Roth. Mr. Roth, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tucker. Why don't I begin with that introduction? Because, you know, that wasn't really an honest explanation of what the book said. What you're quoting from is Human Rights Watch's annual World Report. It covers 90 countries around the world, including those that you mentioned there. You know, we condemn, you know, Egypt, the atrocities being committed by Putin, Assad's killing of people in Syria, you know, Putin, Erdogan, I mean, a number of the friends of Trump. So in addition, we highlight what we talk about the global rise of populists. And it isn't, oh, just Trump criticized a disabled journalist. It's that there are a group of people, Trump included, but also Marine Le Pen in France, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, Viktor Orban in Hungary, Jaroslaw Kaczynski in Poland, a series of people who are rising in Western countries. And what they have in common is that all of them claim a special insight into what the majority wants and claims that that majority desire, the will of the people, justifies their basically dumping on certain disfavored minorities. We saw that in the case of Trump with his, you know, his xenophobia, his racism, his nativism, his misogyny, his Islamophobia.
I've heard the lecture.
Yeah, and so
basically, but hold on. But wait, stop. You just said I was dishonest in my characterization.
Yes, because in other words, you said that he said Trump is a threat to the world because he mocked a disabled journalist. Now, I think that was the wrong thing to do, but to say that that's because he's a threat to the world, honestly, we think he's a threat to, frankly, democracy in the United States, because I'm not sure that this is a man who actually respects the limits on executive power. But our big concern globally is that this is a man who I don't think wants to stand up for human rights around the world.
Okay, I understand your position, but I just want
for our viewers I'm just describing what the report said.
Right, your World Report 2017.
Exactly.
And I just want to, and look, by the way, I think that there are human rights abuses in lots of countries. I think the U.S. has committed human rights abuses, and I'm glad that there are people watching it. I'm not against monitoring human rights abuses. I'm for it.
And the U.S. is one of the 90 countries that Human Rights Watch covers, exactly.
What I'm bothered by is the distortion of scale and the obviously partisan motives you have, which I think belittle your mission. But I'm going to give you an example. So you devote, on the subject of Zimbabwe, which is an openly racist country committing ethnic cleansing against a minority in the country, as you know, you commit 1,398 words. Cuba, which keeps dissidents in prison, 1,742. North Korea, or the worst country in the world, 1,609. Iran, 1,896. Saudi Arabia, 2,500. The United States, 3,782 words. So I guess my point is, if it's more than twice the space that you spend describing the human rights abuses in countries that define the term human rights abuses. It's all out of whack.
Do you really think bean counting words is the measure of how severe somebody's human rights violations are?
It's one measure.
Don't you have to look at what the words
of it.
say, Tucker?
Yes, and I did.
You accuse me of being partisan. Let's look, for example, I had an op-ed in the Washington Post 3-4 days before Trump's inauguration where I was highly critical of Obama for his failures of a counterterrorism policy in ways that I think make America much less safe. If you looked at that World Report over the prior 8 years, we would have been highly critical of Obama's human rights policies, as we were. So this is not about
you weren't actually, and I read them every year, and you're not.
I know you didn't call me in for those cases.
You're not highly critical.
Yeah, you were probably happy that I was criticizing Obama. You didn't call me in then.
No, I was actually happy that you're one of the few people on the left who raised concerns about the drone program, which I think are legitimate.
I'm a principled human rights
proponent. And good for you. Well, actually, you are on the left, and it's obvious from what you write. And let me give you an example. This is Human Rights Watch. This is on your website. Human rights in danger. What is happening to human rights in the world? The United States, Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. He has said many things against human rights. I'm quoting you. He has said, for example, he blamed people who have come to the U.S. from other countries for problems with money and jobs. Well, some of those criticisms are legitimate and rooted in fact and economics. Then he said he made fun of someone with a disability. How is mocking someone or being rude a threat to human rights? I mean, I know you don't like it. I don't like it either. But it's not a threat to human rights. Like, what is that?
A president is supposed to uphold the rights of everybody, including the disabled. You don't want a president who, rather than protecting the disabled, mocks them. That's
but
not
he
about
wasn't
human
questioning
rights.
the rights of the no. Now this is when you're above this. He wasn't questioning the rights of the disabled. By the way, he was a candidate, not a president, when he did this. He was mocking a guy in a rude way. Now I wouldn't allow my children to act that way. I thought it was offensive. But he didn't question the rights of the disabled. He mocked a specific New York Times reporter.
No,
why are you conflating that with an attack on human rights?
Because he's an aspiring president, and the responsibility of the president is to respect the rights of everybody, including
so mocking somebody
so
is an attack on everybody who shares their characteristics? What are you saying?
It's illustrative of a president who is not terribly interested in defending the rights of the unpopular. That's our concern. And whether the unpopulars are the undocumented immigrants or refugees or blacks or women, you know, over and over, you saw this disrespect for these people, which is not what you would want in the case of a president whose job it is to uphold everybody's
generalizations rights. Rather than, you know, but you're not answering a specific question that I asked.
What was the
question?
You're
going to the big picture. The big picture was, how was candidate Trump's rudeness to a disabled New York Times reporter, illustrative, as you put it, of his feelings about the disabled generally? How is that undermining the rights of disabled people by mocking one New York Times reporter who's disabled? It's not, actually.
We all saw that little thing he did. It was mocking a disabled person, you know. So that is not the kind of respect for the disabled that you look for in a president whose job, among other things,
how does that
is to
undermine
protect
their rights? I'm quoting you. How does that undermine their rights?
Let me explain. We'll go back to the report. What we highlighted in that report is that here is first a candidate, now a president, who claims this special insight into what the people want and has used that insight to trample on actual people and their rights. And obviously, these are early days in his presidency, so we're not saying this is necessarily where he's going, but we are worried. And that's the reason we wrote that report. Okay. And we are seeing this.
Look, you're not being. I think there are things to worry about, and I think you're the guy to bring those to our attention. But when you start claiming that making fun of a New York Times reporter is an attack on all disabled people, you undermine your credibility.
You're the one who said that. You're the one who said that. I said
it says right here.
No. I said that somebody who mocks the disabled or jokes about groping women or disparages black people as living in these hellholes in inner cities, or says that all Mexicans are criminals, or treats all Muslims or all Syrian refugees as would-be terrorists, that is not the respect for individual difference that I look for in a president whose job it is to protect the rights of us all, including the unpopular, including minorities.
Including the unpopular. But again, you haven't explained
in fact,
why a specific attack on one person. Look, what you're doing is engaging in a piece of political rhetoric rather than a sober critique of human rights.
Wait.
No, because you're committing
politics. You didn't call me in the last 8 years when we were being highly critical of Obama, because I presume you like that. I'm not being partisan. I'm not being political. I'm trying to be principled here and hold every president to uphold the standards of human rights, including for the disfavored.
Let me summarize, almost from memory, your summary of President Obama. You said his one main failing was he didn't do enough to make good, to fix the human rights problems that the previous president left him, that he left the door open for the next president because he didn't ameliorate the human rights violations that President Bush left him. It was basically a partisan statement.
No, one of the questions I had was, for example, I mean, Obama never prosecuted anybody for torture. He never closed down Guantanamo. I mean, these were major failings on his part. He was not nearly as transparent in his use of drones as we wanted to do. We were highly critical of him in many respects. Now, I mean, our concern about... You go back and read our 8 years of reports. You'll see plenty of criticism. That's not the issue.
I have. I read them every year. Let me ask you one last question. I've always wanted to ask you this. Yeah. So the Constitution guarantees, and the courts have upheld this, the right of individuals to keep and bear arms. That is under attack by a lot of politicians in this country who are trying to take away people's right, law-abiding people's right, to exercise their Second Amendment guarantee. That is an attack on their human rights as defined by the Constitution, and I've never heard you stand up against that. Why?
Well, international human rights law, which is what we uphold, which is different from constitutional law, doesn't talk about the right to bear arms. In fact, it talks about the duty of a government to protect the safety of everyone. And if you compare, you know, the epidemic of gun violence in this country with many other countries that have much tighter gun control laws and much greater public safety, you can make the opposite argument, Tucker. You can make the argument that the gun advocates are undermining human rights of Americans.
I know that you make that argument. The First Amendment, though, is a universal right, the right to express your political views. A week ago tonight, Milo Yiannopoulos was prevented from speaking by a violent mob. They wouldn't let him speak. His right to speak freely was abridged. I didn't see any press release from you guys on that, or the many attacks on the First Amendment we see from the left.
Yeah.
Why?
Because we focus on what governments do, not what individual people do. But obviously, the right includes the right of Milo to speak.
It's a state university.
Everybody has a right to speak, even if it's unpopular. I don't differ with you.
Well, I notice you don't. Okay. Thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, Edward Snowden.